and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, and so for the minute taker, we're going to take attendance. So Lauren, do you mind kicking it off?
Not at all. Lauren Dukas.
Allison DeCesare.
Richard Manzo.
Peter Georgiantis, Selectman's Rep.
Laura Stevens.
Frank Hobbs, Vice Chair.
Joe Alexander.
Jared Talbot, School Board Rep.
Scott Gross, Business Administrator.
Melanie Renfrew Hebert.
Stacy Belmore.
Samantha Kearns.
Perfect, so there's a quorum. So the first thing we're going to do, I don't have an agenda, but I'm going off my head right now. So the first thing we're going to do, we have a set of minutes from all of our tours. So I was hoping that everybody has had the opportunity. They weren't like hard minutes, but they were posted online. Are we comfortable approving those minutes tonight, or do you want to put it off to another meeting?
Do you want us to just approve them in one big go?
No, you have to do,
Individually?
yes.
Joe, did they get sent to us?
No.
Oh, okay.
I believe they were posted online.
Posted online.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so, go ahead, Stacey.
I mean, I would rather wait till I can see them. I didn't get a chance to get online today.
Okay. So let's table this then till our meeting on Tuesday.
Thank you.
November 7th. Okay, so now we're going to kick off the school deliberations. So for everybody's notice, we're going to get the school taken care of hopefully by, I'm hoping for the end of next week. We have 4 meetings though planned for school deliberations if we need those. So tonight, I'm thinking of like an hour and a half to 2 hours. I'm going to try not to go too late. We'll see how far we get. But I'm going to do a hard stop if we finish at Maple Avenue at 102, then I'll do a hard stop then so we finish before that. But that is 42 pages. So if we don't finish that, we'll do that. That's about half the packet. So just for the minute reference, Doug Pounds just walked in. So the first thing I want to do is kick it off to Jared and with assistance from Scott to kind of give us a detail around school deliberations. I know that we heard presentations at the same time as the school board, but can you talk a little bit about what changes were made, what warrant articles are coming out, if any, and anything else you think is important before we start deliberating?
So for a few of the items that we have, there were some minor changes to our overall budget that was forwarded to the proposed budget of this budget committee. A lot of budget terms in there. But not so great. I believe that there is a reference to an additional SPED activity that was unknown at the time we had our initial proposals. That SPED activity, of course, is required by law and was the amount of roughly $500,000 that's going to be charged to our district. Some other activities that we have is what we'll be reviewing is the warrant article for our main operating budget. I do know that there is a petition from the town, not the town, but residents of the town for a warrant article that will also come before us. And there may be a potential another set or just one other warrant article that we'll talk at a later meeting. But we're ready to go for our overall operating budget that we want to propose as part of this package.
Okay, and Jared, have there been any significant changes
Significant?
It's inside.
other than the $500,000?
Yeah. So go
Scott,
ahead,
if you
Scott.
want to talk about the $500,000.
Yeah, so inside your packet, this is on the opposite side of the table of contents. You'll see what changes the school board made from the superintendent's budget. Jared is correct in the sense that district placement is a $500,000 total expense, but because we already had budgeted $100,000, this turned out to be what's called a residential placement, and that obviously drove up the cost substantially. So it's a net of another $400,000 for that. So there were, you'll see there, teacher substitute line, the board raised that by $30,000 to be more in line with actuals. SAU services went up $18,492. For those of you who don't know, the SAU board meets after the superintendent's budget, and with that there was an increase to the SAU budget, which the SAU board approved. So that then was amended. There was a slight decrease in Bartlett Data Communications, an increase in Mountain View Middle School building repairs, again, to be in line with the actuals, and then lastly, Mountain View Media Electronic Information. That one pertains to the fact that we were getting free services by the state. Discovery Ed was one of those things that's free. It's no longer free. And then we also combined, we used to have two separate subscriptions for Gale, which is online databases. So Laura, you probably already know this because you work in that field, but we had two separate subscriptions that collectively cost money, more money than if we lumped them together. So now we have a more or less a district subscription to all of these online research databases. And in order to do that, we had to do a little housekeeping, charge the high school less money, charge the middle school more money. And then with that Discovery Ed, it was a slight increase of $3,000 change. So we'll cover that as we go through. Really, I think the big issue, I want to talk a little bit, just if you could indulge me, when we have a very, very large special education increase like we have here, you're going to see a corresponding increase on the revenue side, but it's not dollar for dollar, unfortunately. So I see some heads nodding. So the state does assist local school districts in what you call these, for lack of a better term, a catastrophic, very large situation like this one. So the first, about the first $70,000 of any out-of-district placement, whether is borne by the local school district. And then what the state does is that they say, again, these are current numbers, anything over $200,000, the state pretty much, they say that they will take all of those costs. So in this particular case, if we have a $500,000 placement, technically anything over that $200,000, the state is supposed to pick up the tab and give us reimbursement in the following year. But unfortunately, the state sets a finite amount of money in a pool for all school districts, and they have rarely funded it at 100%. And in some years, it's 90%, 80, it's been as low as 60. So of that, say that 300,000, we might only get 240,000 of that one, and then there's another formula that's involved. So, and you don't get it until the year after. So we have to kind of suck this up in the first, year, and then in following years we'll see a little bit more revenue. But it's not a good thing. But I just wanted to at least share with you that we do see a little bit more revenue, and then next year we'll see a little bit more to help offset it. But these types of things affect almost every community. I was sharing with Frank and before the meeting started that we have one in New Boston now, and then there was another one in a neighboring town, as I speak to my peers. And when our town is actually one of the bigger ones, if you're a small community like New Boston or a Dunbarton or a Bow, I mean, you have a $500,000 hit to your budget. It's pretty significant. So that's, I just want to kind of let you know that. The second one was more procedural.
Go ahead,
Can I just
Stacey.
ask a
I'm sorry.
question on that?
Yeah.
So you're saying right now you have a student that's been recently placed in
Yeah.
out-of-home school placement?
Yeah.
As a decision by the school, correct?
Yes,
Not by the state? This was the school decision to place him?
correct.
Okay, so that's why we're getting less back from the state, because it's a choice of,
It depends. So on a court-ordered placement, right, that's when there's a cap, and then the state does pay after. This one is not a court-ordered placement. This is just an individual, this is
can't be
a,
maintained in the school?
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So do you have an idea of how long, is this an older student? I'm just wondering, because this is going to be a hit for budget going forward.
I'd have to get back to you, but it was my understanding that we might have this for another 6 years, 6 or 7 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
'Cause I think that's important to think about for future budget.
Yeah.
It's not like a child is a senior in high school and going to be out in a couple of years. Okay.
Laura.
That was my question, the extent of how many years this will affect us.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Samantha.
Because the, I guess, like the revenue side of it occurs in the following year, after this student graduates, do we still receive the revenue, like?
Yes.
When
So
they're in
there's
like
one-
their 13th
so
year of
you hit-
school?
Yeah, perfect. That's a great question. So in that first year, it's a really difficult challenge for school districts to bear that cost. So some of them will use emergency funding, or some of them have these special funds for these types of situations. We'll have what's called a special education revolving type of fund, if you ever have one of these. But then when that student no longer attends, in that final year, there is no expense, but you do then get that corresponding revenue from the following year. But you might not realize that for 6, 7, however many years, but you are precisely right.
Doug?
Yeah, another question. Two questions, actually. First, did I hear you right? The first 70,000 is borne by the town?
Yeah.
And
Yep.
then you said 200, above 200,000 potentially by the state?
Yeah, so there is.
Just wondering about the 130,000
So there's a donut
between.
hole, kind of like Medicare, where you pay, and then there's like this middle period where the state pays 80% and the school district pays 20.
Okay.
And then after the 200,000, they supposedly pick up the rest. I mean, I have,
Kinda like a
obviously I got an Excel
deductible.
spreadsheet that I plop in the number and it kind of, it tells me, and I can put in different percentages. So I've calculated the revenues at an 80% reimbursement, which is middle of the road. I mean, it could be, it's not worst case, it's not best case, and that's kind of how I figure out the revenues.
Okay. Second question, are we privy to where the money goes for this in particular, or is that a private thing with this student?
I mean, I gotta be a little bit delicate in terms of it, so what'll happen is on our manifests, it's going to say like where these placements are. So we send students to a whole different array of schools that are on our school district manifest. So without going into a whole lot, we send them Lighthouse Schools and out-of-district placement, Mount Prospect Academy, RFK. There's several of these schools that take out-of-district and residential. There's a few that take residential, but you will see those on our school district manifest. We cover them every time that we have a school board meeting. We'll list those out, and it's also on our website. But we don't attach, obviously, for privacy reasons, any type of student names.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Peter?
Today we're just talking the budget. How does this affect the default budget on both sides, on the revenue side and
Yeah, so.
on the charge side?
Right, so this is part of the default budget because it's mandated. And on the revenue side, I put in, so this particular situation, we have, I don't know the exact number, but it's 250-ish, I think, 250,000, maybe a little more of what I would unplanned special ed costs. So that will incur this year. They're going to go up a lot next year because it's going to be a full year. So I'll plan on those revenues off that 250 in the spreadsheets that I have. Then next year, I'll be able to plan off of the full, and for this one, the 500,000. But, so I have to only plan revenues for next year based upon incurred costs this year, if that makes sense.
So the revenues will go hit, the revenues do hit the
Yeah,
default budget?
They will,
Eventually.
yes. Yeah, yep.
Okay, Laura?
Thank you. So this increase, it's for one student, and it is the school, be that the team of teachers, they decided that the student would be better served in another. I just want to understand how this came about.
So, whenever you have any variety of services, it could be services that are minor. A student needs speech. You have what's called an IEP team.
Right.
That IEP team is comprised of the classroom teacher, special education teacher, any type of specialists that are involved, the special ed facilitator, special ed director. Many times, it's obviously the parent and guardians. It is any outside advocate that is there for that particular student. In some cases, it could be as many as a dozen people around the table. And from there, it is determined, what is the best course of action to provide for those students' needs. And these are needs that are both educational and everything that surrounds and supports the education. So in this particular case, it's the things that support the education piece.
And there are
as well.
times, sorry if I could do just a follow-up, and there are times that this is court-ordered for whatever reason, but in this case, it's
This
the
one's
team
not, but you-
decided, like, this is the best for the student.
Correct. So we do have what's called court-ordered placement. So these are students who obviously are involved in the juvenile criminal justice system. And then a court will determine what is the best place to educate that student that is not necessarily in the local school environment. And when that happens, and I don't have those exact numbers, but they're similar, Doug, to what, the 60 grand that I mentioned, where you hit that cap, and then everything else then is paid for by the state on the court-ordered ones. But I think,
Did it
I
just
know
go
we have
from
at least
70 to
one
60?
court-ordered. We might have to, what?
Yeah, I thought you said 70 before, you just said 60.
I'm sorry, 70, yeah.
Thank you.
So, and after that, it's all paid for. So, yeah, right now, they look at a formula that is 3.5 times the average cost of an education, which is 19,000 and change. And so I'm giving you rough numbers, average numbers.
Thank you.
Stacey?
Yeah, so I guess that begs the budget question. If other districts have like the revolving fund, the bank, in case there's a
Yeah.
contingency plan, that this might happen. I mean, working for DCYF, we're seeing this is a huge rise right now, kids going into residential and school placements. So I'm wondering, is it something that you guys have thought about having a bank in case this happens again? I mean, if you have another student, you're not talking another $500,000
Yeah,
or
so-
more if they're doing residential and school.
Right, so the
So-
big difference between 10 years ago and now is that there's legislation called the 5% contingency, used to be the 2.5%, which allows school districts to retain monies on their balance sheets for emergencies. In this particular case, if I was asked by the board, and I have not yet been asked by the school board, should we create one? I would say, I don't think you need to, because I think the contingency fund allows you to have those monies on your balance sheet in the event of something like this. So in the case of New Boston, for an example, they have both that revolving fund and a contingency fund. So I think that's what that contingency fund is for. And if we get into a situation later on in the budget year where things are not looking pretty, then we might have to come back to the school board and the budget committee to say, okay, but we're early, we're in November now, so we'll see how that goes. But just wanted to, that's kind of how the process, I don't think we would need one, because that tool was not available, say 10 years ago.
Frank, then Allison.
Question, Scott, just to clarify the potential exposure to the town. Assuming a $500,000 expense, you're saying there's the town would be responsible for the first 70-ish,
Yeah,
and after that, the state would pay, assuming the bucket pays what it stays intact, the state would pay 80%, with the town paying 20% of the next 130,000.
yeah.
And then the remainder, which is over 200,000, assuming the bucket stays intact.
Yes, sir.
The state would pay 100%, which, by my math, that leaves an exposure for Goffstown of 135. Now,
Yeah, so hold on one second, because I did create a spreadsheet, as I had to.
Okay.
On this one, and I can tell you what that is. And the spreadsheet that I created, which I can share with you, it essentially allows, it's like a model spreadsheet, so I can put in 80%, 90%, 100%, 60%. And that then allows you to kind of calculate what those different possibilities are. The challenge that we have is that the state has rarely paid 100%
Right.
of what's called special education aid. And it's hard to predict what they're going to pay from a year-to-year basis, because they tell you pretty much the year, it's already a done deal. So you have to anticipate that your revenues are going to be less than, and then if you're pleasantly surprised, and it's better, great, that goes to offset the tax rate. So every year, the Department of Revenue Administration, right before we do our tax rate setting, they'll call me up and they'll go over my revenues and they'll say, so this year was kind of like one of those unusual ones where the state did not give us, what they have in the past, so I had to then lower, my revenue expectation for that. Now, that was offset because I did other, investment income was a lot better than I thought it would be, so it kind of balanced out, but I kind of go on the lower side, so I'm going 80%, which I think will be, you can yell at Joe if he's a state rep if it doesn't.
80% of the amount over 200,000.
Right, exactly.
Okay,
Yes.
so for example, with that,
Yeah.
instead of the town's obligation being 135,000, it would be approximately 195,000.
Could be, yeah.
At the 80%.
Yeah.
I know we're shooting at a
Yeah.
moving target,
Yeah,
so.
yeah.
Okay.
So great point that you made, though. We could see, it could be 120, 130, or it could be 200,000 exposure. So it's a tough one to pin down.
Right. Well, the range should be 135K and up.
Yeah, yep, yeah.
Allison?
Scott, you keep making reference to New Boston. Did you say they have a similar issue going on there?
Yeah, unfortunately.
Does that then become our issue?
No.
No.
They're
still-
separate school districts.
No,
And
I
then
meant
even
when
if
they
it was a New
join-
Boston student in our schools, they're still
Yes.
responsible
Okay.
for those students, no matter what age they are.
But
Coming out
our
of their
teams,
budget.
It's coming out of their budget. So the area agreement, all special ed costs for the most part, if they had a one-on-one para, they pay the cost of that.
Okay.
We don't have many of truly one-on-one
Right.
paras here, but if we did, and they were specific to either a Goffstown or a New Boston student, that gets peeled out of their tuition, and then they pay that separately.
Okay.
But we do have quite a few shared paras,
Right.
where a para might support 2 or 3 kids, and in that case, that's part of the, the overall tuition.
overall. Okay.
Great, Mr. Chair. So as we continue on, as Scott alluded to, that changes page, what we're looking at for a total warrant article, assuming that there's no changes to our budgets during our deliberations, we'd look at a total warrant article for Article number 2, be $55,719,910. That's what actually would be posted there as the proposed budget. If you go to the notes, so the big package that says with notes, if you go to the very last page, you'll see what the default is, which is $52,583,029.
I'm sorry, could you do that again?
So it's on the last page, right there, so you can follow along. So we're looking at a delta between the proposed budget and the default budget of $317,987 between those two. So just as a reminder, we go through the operating budget, but the food service fund and the special revenue fund, which are, what we use to pay a lot of our items, we have to appropriate that as part of the warrant article, because we are getting funds for parents sending in cash for students to get their lunches or any others, as well as a special revenue fund so that we can pay our grants. Those are 2 of those funds that we need to add to the warrant that goes out to the voters. So with that, I think probably the next best thing is to stick with the proposed budget with notes. Let's probably go through that, Mr. Chair, because it has some information, some detail on there. But if you want to go back to prior year's actuals, all that you have to do is look at the fund, location, function, program, and account. That's kind of the primary key, if you will, between those 2 packets that you have. So if you want to see actuals for prior years, even though that we're going to use the notes section page, you'll be able to see the prior years for our actuals that we've used. So with that, Mr. Chair, do you want me to start going through the pages, or would you?
Well,
see it?
I would like to ask the committee how we'd like to do this, so we can go page by page, we can do one, couple minutes, review a few pages and move on. How do we want to do it?
I know that for the school board, which was very efficient for us, is we went through page by page, so the chair or whomever's emceeing it, quarterbacking it, they'd say, okay, any questions on page number 1? Wait a little bit, no questions, we just are gonna go to page number 2. Doesn't mean that you can't go back if you're like, wait a minute, I'm researching something and we gotta go back. But the best thing to do is to say, for instance, to whomever has a question, yes, I have a question on reference line number 5, which is, a default of 123,000 and our proposed is the same, but there's some numbers there. For me, if there's a difference, probably you want to investigate. If there's a highly difference over actuals, you might have a question for that. But if the defaults and the proposed are roughly the same, you might be inquisitive about that, something that you might want to talk about, but, again, it's your prerogative what you have questions on.
So, and we can go in as fast or slow as the committee prefers, and we have 4 days to do this and more if needed, so if you feel rushed, we can slow it down, or if you want to ask questions, it's okay. Like, we have this budget until we move it to public hearing, so we have control over this for as long as we need it. Okay, are there any questions before we get started? Lauren?
Thank you. The commonly used codes for location, program, and function, those stay the same, right? Because I have an old, code
Correct.
cheat
So-
sheet, and I don't want to be like, oh, we
It's
changed
this
that.
packet, page 102 of the
Oh, is
packet
it
with
all the way in the
blip.
back? Oh, cool. I didn't go through the whole thing. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So the information's there. I know most of them by heart now. So like for location, 000 is district. 101, I think, is Bartlett or Maple or something along those lines. So,
Seems like you got it memorized.
yeah.
What page did you say, Joe? Mr. Chair, what page did you say?
Page 102 of your binded clip packet.
And I'll try
So I
to,
have a 91.
Yeah, I don't have anything with 1, 2.
Mine goes to 91.
Mine's on.
Of your,
No,
with
the
the same
ring.
ring.
The three ring. Yeah, the binder.
I'll try to also articulate as we kind of change for function, because the 1100 function is specific to something, and then you get to the 1200 function, that's our sped items, which are kind of what we just talked about in a lot of our conversations today.
All right, any other questions? Okay, we're gonna get going. So like I said, I'd like to get through Maple Ave, but if not, that's okay. So we're gonna start, and if we move on from a school, you can always go back to it next meeting and discuss if you want to make changes or whatever, so. What?
You're shaking your head.
We talked about.
Once it's done, it's done. All right, page 1. We're in the district lines.
So the district lines, this isn't applicable to any particular school. This is just, kind of what's happening within the district. This would include some of the SAU items as well as multi-school activities.
I assume almost all of our IT is now in these lines, right? And
yeah, most
a
of
lot
it
of
is.
those changes,
Yep.
plus or minus, you're
Yep.
gonna see throughout, because we moved them from school.
There are
into
certain
district.
things like laptop leases are based upon a school, but a lot of the software is included in the district line.
Okay. Any questions, page 1? Page 2?
Oh, can I ask a
Oh, go ahead, Sam.
On line number 18, I noticed there's something there for fiscal year '24, but then there's nothing for '25 at all. Did that just cease to exist? I realize it's $8,000.
No, it's when people change positions, and for some folks who've been in the budget committee for a long time, there is movement between district or building. So where an employee might be a district employee, then they go to a school, or they're at a para that is with a student, and then they go to another school, and for some reason that para then goes with that kid. The cost goes from one school to another. So you'll see that often.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, page 2. Okay. We're on page 3. Like I said, let me know if I'm going too fast. Scott, I have a question around line 75. So your plagiarism detection software, do people write their papers with AI, and is that software
Yes.
detectable to AI? I mean, I write some speeches in AI, but I didn't say that out loud, did I?
We know that.
Did you all catch that?
So, yes, it does help the staff mostly here at the high school and middle school, not so much at the elementary school levels, but it is
Plagiarize an elementary school paper.
What does A1 steak sauce have to do with your speech?
Right.
That's what
Yes,
you meant, right?
it does help identify that.
AI
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
That's why I'm curious, it's kind of a
Yeah.
new thing, that's all. Okay. Any other questions, page 3?
All right, go to page 4.
Just a quick question. Some
Go
of
ahead.
the notes that have dollar values, and some of them don't.
Yeah, that's, it depends, like, on a lot of cases, the notes, I know our IT folks and our facilities, you're gonna see that, because it really helps them when they're managing their budget or just trying to, paying their bills, to have like the vendor, so you'll see like the vendor name and then other things like teacher lines or benefit lines, you won't see as many notes, but in the prior page, I mean, there was about 15, 16 different IT-related software costs that are really specific. You'll see that as we get further along, all of our schools for maintenance, and you'll see elevator companies and all that stuff, but you won't see it on others. On page 5, for an example, you'll see some of the vendors that are used for consultants, outside contractors. And that just helps both our business office staff and our admin assistants and our principals staff in terms of when they're paying invoices, they know, I know this is gonna sound a little bit crazy, but with a PDF copy, they just type in the name of the vendor, and then it goes right to, okay, this is what it makes it easier for them, those notes.
Stacy?
I'm checking my notes first to make sure we didn't discuss this, but this line 106, are we hiring a new assistant principal, or was that from a different line before?
106?
Yeah.
Special ed assistant principal.
It's now at 95,000, it's a new, well, it's in the 25 default, but we never had it before, and I don't see it on any of the presentation stuff.
I will take a look at that.
Anything else, page 4? Lauren?
Thank you. I guess I'm still confused about the notes, so like, line 93. Local 40% share of the E-rate purchase is the known amount is 20,000, but there's nothing in default new or proposed. Like, why is there even a note for money, but it's not even showing up?
It's the so it's the 20,000 plus the 7,500 equals the 27,500 on line 90, right? It's just like itemizing it out.
Right,
gotcha.
so, and by the way, there's a bit of good news on that one. So thank you for bringing that up.
Try.
We just got a notification this week that our E-rate went up to 50%, so, which is nice. We'll get a little bit more money from the federal government. E-rate helps us on anything that relates to like connectivity, wireless type thing. So if we were to buy something that was connectivity related, not just a computer, but like routers, that type of thing, Wi-Fi, you get a 50% reimbursement on those types of projects, which is nice. Whereas now, before we get 40.
Yeah, and also on 106, I'm curious as to why the 95,000 would show up in the default budget when it wasn't previously.
Yeah, we said that we'd get back to you about 2 questions ago on that specific item.
Oh, that was, okay.
Special ed always goes in the default though, correct?
Yeah, it would be, yeah.
Ah,
So if it was a special ed position,
Yeah, this is listed as an
Okay,
assistant
right.
principal, so I think that this is one of those positions that we move part-time from a particular school
Yeah, I think
into
it-
the district line.
Yeah, I think that's what it is, but I
is
have
this
to
the
double check with our
Maple
HR.
Ave?
Yeah, I have to check with our HR director on that, because
Okay.
our HR director does load all of our contracts and everything into the budget module, so I'll have to check.
Okay.
And, you know, candidly, sometimes there's a coding error where it should have belonged in Maple and it ended up in a district line, and we'll fix that if that's the case.
Okay. questions, or go to page 5? Laura?
Thank you. So the 141, that's the 500,000, is that this new?
No.
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 Okay.
That particular line, that 339, is for all what we consider outside consultants, and that number includes, I would say, 2 buckets. Some are buckets for different therapies that kids need, and we do not have a staff member who performs that, all right? The other bucket is that when we cannot hire, a good example is we've had difficulty hiring like a speech pathologist. We then have to hire a consultant, and what you'll see if you look at the actuals is you'll see that they're all over the board, because if we can't hire a speech pathologist, then we have to pay it out of the contracted services line and do a budget transfer into that. So we have had a really difficult time hiring speech pathologists, different types of therapists, behavioral therapy. We have them in our budget, so they're in our budget, but then if we can't fill the job come September, then we have to hire a consultant. And that's why that one is a tricky one. But that 500,000 represents what would be if we were adequately staffed, right?
Can I do a quick follow-up? So those few lines below it, those are all part of that 500,000, like?
The notes?
Yeah, the
Yeah,
notes
it's
and the
just letting
amounts.
you know that it includes behavior therapy,
Right.
mental health. Some of those are the vendors.
Okay.
So it's just, all of that. Like I mentioned before, and Peter asked the question, why do some have notes, why don't others? This just helps the special education director know that we have to account for interpreter services and psychological exams, speech pathology, different testing for kids, and it lets that director know that I gotta think about these things and where they get paid out of.
Okay, Peter?
Going back to that same 141, on 23, it was budgeted at 648,000. Are you, and you reduced it?
I couldn't
What
hear.
line number, please?
Line 141.
141
Yep.
was 23 is 648.14, and you reduced it by 148,000. Is that due to actuals?
It is, as I said before, it's due to the notion that if we have in our budget, they call them behavioral therapists or speech pathologists, et cetera. We have these or a school psychologist is another one. If we can fill those things, then we think that all the other services would be 500,000. For FY '23, I don't remember back then, but it might have been, we might have lowered it because we just didn't think we with the people that we had on staff that we could do that. But
Actually, it was increased, it was a 648. you
correct, and it was
reduced
decreased to 500,000.
All right.
Right.
Page 6.
I have a question about line 163. So we're decreasing it by $10,000, but then when I look at line 165, the note is still that 66,924.
Yeah, it's a mistake. So
Okay.
it should have just been changed.
Okay, so is
Saying
that
it should've been
10,000?
changed, yeah.
56.9 to 50.
The note.
The note, yeah, so when in.
The
like,
budget's right.
The budget number is right. Every once in a while, you come across a note that has not been updated from the prior year. That happened to be one of them.
Thank you.
Good catch. Page 7. Do you know roughly how many English, like, second language students we have?
No,
No, just curious.
I could find that out for you.
Just a little bit curious.
I know that we're
Because
not
it's-
nearly
there's
like
two.
Manchester, I know that for sure.
I had a feeling.
Yeah, but we do have many, I know that. Most of them, we have more, say, at Bartlett than we do at Maple, but we do have them.
All right, page 8.
Where do the athletic stipends come from, 206?
So 206 is co-curricular activities. So these are monies that we pay for coaches or staff associated with those activities as part of our collective bargaining agreement.
Okay.
We are not Pinkerton. We don't pay for other students to come into the district. I said out loud.
Okay, page 9. Scott, that 32,000 new.
Page, okay, I got
Line
you.
number
Page
Yeah.
249.
Yeah.
What is the 32?
So most of that is related to Schoology
Okay. that's-
and
Thank you,
Kaltura.
I got yelled at.
I
don't
didn't
know.
yell.
Who's yelling?
Stacy's yelling.
CIs.
I pointed at the presentation.
She's like, if you look at the presentation.
Fred, Joe.
All right, page 10.
Scott, just
Yeah.
reference line 290, it says Goffstown Professional Development's 30,000, but the budget's 50,000.
Yeah.
Is that another incorrect note?
That's also CBA.
We're at page 11. Samantha.
Thank you. Line number 317, or possibly like 319, is that what we pay our school board members? Is that what the school board
So
stipends are?
317
Is a yes.
is for the school board, 319 is to the
Minute taker.
administrator that takes all of our minutes for all of our meetings, so that we can put those out onto the site. So that would be for any school board meeting, our minute taker, when we approve our minutes, as well as A&F committees.
Yeah.
So our financial committees, our policy committees. We have note takers there, and that second line, 319, is what the money is to pay that.
So the 319 is for the minute takers?
Yes.
Yes,
But the 317 is for,
Public,
it's for the school board.
The elected
I don't know if it's just the school board, but it's for your publicly elected officials. That's their pay.
Are you wishing you ran for school board right now?
no, I just,
You should run for state rep.
$200?
we get paid like
Rolling
mileage,
in
right?
it.
That's wonderful.
2,500, is that?
Well, I guess, one curious question is like, how is that number decreasing? Assuming that the number of school board representatives stays exactly the same.
So for our budgets, we had membership activities the past number of years, through COVID, where people would join, when people would resign, and people weren't there. So that's why the budget went up and down for those.
Okay.
Because we had some positions that weren't filled until we were able to fill them, because people resigned.
Is there anyone that makes up that 317 line that isn't a publicly elected official?
No,
No.
it's all publicly elected officials. The reason why I'm saying this, I don't think it's just a school board. This is where it's,
The other lines are
So-
for.
so the moderator?
Yeah, they're in separate lines.
they are, because I still haven't seen that. But,
Yeah.
so like our deliberative moderator, that's an elected position that.
Clerk.
The clerk, they MC the meeting that we all get together in January.
Right.
They also get a stipend as well.
Right.
And your
I guess I'm
treasurer.
I'm thinking that in terms of like places where we can maybe like trim this budget down, I think that like that is a spot.
It's an option.
Yeah. I know that in the grand scheme of all of this, like $22,000 isn't huge, but I think that it's significant.
I'll just remind the committee that at any point you can make a motion to do that while we're deliberating.
Okay. I wasn't sure if we were waiting till the end.
No,
No.
you can do it at
Oh,
any
God, no.
point. I'll take any motions as we go.
I have a
Laura.
question about it. So that 22,463, are there any RSAs, anything that say that has to be anything?
No, it's just like a select board gets paid for being elected as well.
Okay.
It's basically up to the
So
town.
school board does, select board does.
You-
Budget committee does not.
Budget committee doesn't. That's right.
So,
Joe said that many times.
This one is awfully difficult for a school board rep to respond to. You're okay with it? Well, that's what you have authority.
I have
Well, I just
authority
wanted to make
with
sure
it.
that I understood, like, because the moderator, I think that is town, but I guess they do school as well,
Exactly.
so it's part of
Well,
that.
yeah, no, they're
It has a
different. So
separate
Jim,
moderator.
yeah, Jim's a different moderator from.
Rodney
the
Stark.
town.
Oh, and Rodney.
Jim Raymond's.
I
think it's Jim.
I will just, having someone who served in this capacity, I have been fortunate enough to serve the community as a school board member and as a select board member, and both of those boards work incredibly hard. They put in a tremendous amount of time, and to think about saving money on a budget that is 50-some-odd million dollars on the backs of a school board stipend, which probably equates to $3 to $4 an hour for the time that they put in, is a bit of a slap in the face, but I will just say that.
Just to ask.
Go ahead, Sam.
Sorry, I'm like. Right.
No, go ahead, Samantha.
Is it, I mean, I guess, is it an hourly rate?
No.
Like our-
No.
Okay, so it's like a straight salary,
I
of
get
like,
the same amount that any other member gets, even though that I
Except the
put in.
chair.
Except the chair and vice chair, except that I probably put in 45 hours a month. Some people might put 12 hours a month, but
okay.
that's just what that's where my passion is.
Yeah, well, obviously, we've said it 100 times, the budget committee doesn't get paid, so I wasn't sure
You
if it was
can
an
change
hourly
that.
rate or something like that.
As Joe
'cause I
says, you
just
can
don't
change
know
the
how it
budget committee. not get
You
paid.
can be paid.
works. Yeah, I don't want to get paid, I think, I just want to let everyone know, I love doing this, but I just think it's,
No, to answer your question truthfully, the school board gets paid twice a year, usually in the March timeframe as well as the October timeframe. And it's roughly about $1,000 for that quote-unquote pay period. But we are members of the town, so we are offered insurance, but we'd have to pay it at 103%, everything else.
We are also offered insurance,
Yep.
technically.
But we just have to pay for it completely out of pocket.
Okay, Frank?
Question was answered.
Great. Any other questions around this stuff? Okay. Page 13.
12.
Oh. Page 13.
I have a question.
Oh,
We answer the same question every
what's
year.
so? I'm missing something. Laura, go ahead.
And this is just because I literally do not know. I'm not necessarily saying it shouldn't be. 331, 332, 333. So school board there's a line for unemployment workers comp. That's a thing.
Yeah, I can get hurt, walking up the stairs.
Okay. Fair enough.
I apologize, Mr. Chair. I just was giggling at the retirement celebration with bells and apples in the notes. I just was like, wait, bells and apples.
So,
Like, it's a lot of money for Apple.
I enjoy the notes. I
Bells
don't
too.
recall
Oh,
getting
okay.
the notes last time.
those aren't apples that the school board eats. Those are
No,
actually.
this was not, there was just, I tittered out of what I should not have.
These are the celebrations that we have for our very retirees and our senior employees that are retiring. So, giving them the plaques, the kudos that they deserve.
I was absolutely not saying why. I just enjoyed the note.
Okay.
It jumped out at me.
All right, page 13. Page 14.
So just a note, just a reminder, if we look at reference line 380, that's what Scott mentioned for our SAU fees that are attached to this district. And of course, New Boston also has monies that they pay for the SAU services. So if you look to the changes, that's the change that was referenced of this increase by $18,492 from when we originally got it.
Stacy.
So similar question as before on 381, like another new position that I don't see.
So this is actually a transfer one, so this is the administrative assistants, kind of pooling them, instead of them having applied to a specific school. This was taking one of those individuals and putting them at a district level to kind of supervise all those activities.
So it is a new position though? Or is it?
It's a
so-
change of a position.
So we're gonna see it decrease somewhere else?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay.
Here at the high school, we lowered the number of admin assistants.
Okay.
Jared, can you talk a little, I know I'm going backwards, but I was just looking at the School Board Association
Yep.
line. Can you talk to me about the benefits that the school board gets for being a part of the School Board Association?
Yeah, so we get several
What page is
different
that
things.
again? I gotta go back.
What line
Hold
is
on
it?
one second.
While you talk about, or get the line number. So the School Board Association gives us many things. It gives us some training, what does it mean to be a new school board member? It gives us some understanding that's going on at the state level. So here are some bills that are things that we want to keep our eye on and potentially want to look at to join or not join or speak out against. So it's kind of a coalition of all of our school boards to get individuals up to speed, have some training, if you will, of school board members, but also some activities that are going on in Concord that we use in order to potentially change our policies. So those are kind of the activities that we use for that membership fee.
Yeah, the big one also I would add is they provide school districts what's called model school district policies, which then you can use to develop your own. That is a massive, massive help. There's probably a few hundred school board policies that Goffstown has, and most districts have. And then the other one is that they do have attorneys who work there. So if it is a generic type of question, rather than contacting our own attorney at $200-something an hour, we can contact them on some of those more basic things. But then the training that they give you is just, you have new school board members, just like you have the New Hampshire Municipal Association that provides budget committee training, select board training, same type of thing. It helps introduce new school board members to being in the role, and also to help that when there are changes to laws, it gives them the training for that too. So it's a pretty valuable tool.
Is that the division of the state?
Say again?
Is that a division of the state?
No, it's
or a
not.
private
They're
entity?
independent.
It's a private.
Yeah.
And do any of these funds that's sent to them or given to them go to any PACs that you know of?
I'm not aware of that. The New Hampshire School Boards Association does lobby, just like the NHMA does have a lobbyist. I think they only have one, I believe. I believe it's Barrett Christina, who's the director, is the only one who is an official lobbyist, meaning that person can go to the State House and testify either for or against particular bills that might either be positive or maybe adverse to school districts. So in that case, but in terms of like a PAC, like a political action committee, that I'm unaware of. I do know that they do lobby on behalf of school districts.
And does the school board typically have a say in what they lobby for or against?
Yeah, so they have
Do
an
they
annual.
survey their members?
Yeah, so they have annual conventions where they have school board members who can go to that, and then they, in terms of resolutions and what issues are important to those, to those member districts. So boards have a say in that, and then any type of, they have, each school district then has a vote in terms of what would be, like a legislative ask, if that were to be the case. But they, as you know from being a state rep, they don't do a whole lot of like proactive, it's more reactionary to the 300 some odd bills that probably, go through the legislature every year or two about education. So it's more reactive than anything else.
Okay. Sorry, I opened up.
That's okay.
Allison.
Mine's unrelated, so I
Go
wanted
ahead.
to make sure everyone has it.
Is everyone else have that? That was my question. Go ahead, Allison.
So two things. One, Laura, I wanted to mention, you had asked about the workers' comp. If someone is paid as an employee, you always have to cover them on workers' comp, no matter how much. It is required by law, just so you know, just to
Yes.
clarify
And
that.
that's why
a lot
it's-
better than I did.
And that's a weird
It's
amount.
not
That's
even an
why.
option, right? It's a weird amount, but that's because they don't get paid that much. Absolutely have to do it.
Okay.
So an unrelated question, on line 375 and 376, the $4,000 for election services, and it says AccuVote maintenance agreement, what is that?
So Peter might be able to also talk about this with us, but we actually share some of the costs associated with our elections, specifically the March elections. Because there are technically two elections. You got the town and the school board, and that's our portion of it.
Okay.
So like the ballots are separate.
Yep, I just couldn't figure out why,
Yeah.
why it related to the school, but I get it. Okay.
And you'll see on the town side that we have extra elections this year, so coming
Yep.
up, next year. I mean.
Right, okay,
With the school wouldn't participate in
right.
those, like a federal election, they wouldn't participate in that.
Gotcha, so this is just to cover that local
Right.
one. Yep, okay, thanks.
Okay, so we're on page 13. Anything else for page 13?
And we're on page 14, sorry.
Page 14?
I jumped
Anything else
back.
on page 14? Right, page 15?
I just want to go back to that one question that was asked about the voting. Are you participating in the purchase of the new machines at all?
So I did alert the school board, I'm unaware of what the select board is doing, but I did let the school board know that we typically have contributed, I think, one of the 4 machines we have done. So I would anticipate that we would, I just don't know, you'll let us know.
If Derek let us know.
Yeah,
what's going on.
if you're doing that.
I don't think the state's made their decision on what machine for sure yet.
They've
They picked two.
They've picked 2 different vendors, and some, I think it was in the newspaper yesterday, one, I think it was Dairy, picked a vendor, and they're ready to go, but I haven't heard anything from Town
I think
Hall.
they're testing them this cycle. I think in some areas. Secretary of State.
They've already tested, and
Yeah, they've already tested
there are
what
2
they're
vendors
purchasing.
that you can pick from.
And it has to be done next year, not this
Yeah,
year.
so we'll wait the lead from the select board and the town hall on that one.
Okay, page 15, anything else? Page 16.
What's Depot Street office space?
Okay, so,
What line number?
That is line number 406.
Thank you.
we rent space from New England Sheet Metal on Depot Street. It's about, I don't know, $27,000-ish, and we rent office space from them. In the past, we've had Alternative High School there. Now we have our IT and our, some of our admin assistance space that is over there. It's not an incredibly large space. It's probably size from here to there. And right now, that's where we're housing, gonna have like 2 to 3 of our admin assistants. We're testing a shared admin assistant type model where admin assistants from different schools can help each other. Right before, it was like if you were the admin assistant for Maple Avenue, that's all you did. And now, we've been working now where if you're doing a student registration, you can do a student registration from any school. And/or if you need information, certain things can be done regardless of what building that you're in. And one of the things that we're doing is our plan is to have 2 or 3 people at perhaps this building, along with our IT folks. There's a lot of, you can imagine now, with Power School, there's a lot of training that has to happen and like questions in terms of how you're loading the data. We do a lot of electronic registration, so we're trying to make it more centralized, if that's a better terminology, and/or backups. We've had situations where we didn't have an administrative assistant who was on a medical leave, and we were scrambling to try to deal with that. And now we're using the technology with Teams and other things that they can communicate and work regardless of whatever school they're in.
Stacy?
Similar question, so on line 459, it has the same thing. The Depot Street mentioned again for 28,000?
That's the, can you, 459 should be the lease for it.
Yep, and then, so we pay, water's on a
That's the water.
separate line?
Yeah.
Is electric
Hold
on a separate line as well?
Water, can you refer to the other, I'm sorry, I was doing something else, so.
So
One
Peter
of them
brought
is
it-
the lease, so the one that is 458 is the lease.
And then 406 is,
Just for the water, $500 a year for water?
Yeah, that is water, bottled water, it's water. It's-
oh, like
it's
in one of those things, the water
bubbler,
cooler?
cooler.
Water cooler.
Yeah, yeah. it's
For
not-
snacks.
$500 a year?
Could we drink out of the actual tap?
You'd be more, yeah, you want to come over and taste it?
I took out my tap and
They're talking about your water.
Yeah, I trust Richard's water.
I trust Richard's
I trust Richard's water. I got you, Richard.
And we lease it, so it's not, like, in our other schools, like, we do have bubblers with water filters, et cetera, but in this particular case, we're leasing the building, and they don't provide a bubbler or anything like that, so.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else? Page 16, we'll go page 17.
I was just gonna ask you on 16 still. I was
Go
on
ahead.
emergency management system, 454, line 454. To refresh me on that.
Energy management, so this was before my time, but they signed a performance management contract where they replaced a lot of the lighting and energy systems years and years ago. And part of that is that the savings in the energy paid for the financing piece. So what you're seeing there is the financing obligation of 160, in this case, it's 167,000 and change that has to be paid. I think it's for another 8 years. At the time when they did this was before me, they replaced all of the lighting and they did motion sensors and other things where they did a study where it would save more than that on an annual basis, so that's where that is. And that is something that is also ongoing, so we've been having discussions with we're having an audit done as we speak on our HVAC. We have a lot of older air handlers and different systems, and if we were to replace them, companies like Eversource and others provide rebates to us, so we're waiting on that audit, so, you had mentioned, warrant articles, et cetera. We have quite a bit in our CIP, and which I provided you a copy of in terms of HVAC, boilers, et cetera. So when you do replace a 20-year-old boiler with a new energy-efficient boiler, it doesn't require nearly as much fuel, whether that be propane or oil, to operate it. And there are companies that want to incentivize that. So Eversource is one of those where, to give you an example, a couple of years ago, we replaced all of the interior lighting in our gymnasiums at like think it was like $18,000 total, because Eversource just gave us like $60,000 of grants and rebates to do it. So it was a win-win. So that's kind of what that particular one was, Pete, but it was done at a district level, and it was a multi-million-dollar rehab at the time.
Okay. Page 17, anything on page 17? Samantha?
This is line 474. How many vehicles does the school board have? Because it's vehicle gasoline.
It's in the CIP. Let me take a look. Excuse me. I know we have a few pickup trucks, we have a few tractors.
Snow removal, stuff like that.
Snow removal, yeah.
Okay. And then, I guess my other question is, 35 multiplied by 180 days is 6,300, not 4,500. So this, I'm still on 474, but it kind of bleeds into 475. So 475 says $35 a day for 180 days, which I also feel like is a lot of gas, but I mean, I guess if you're clearing snow, that would be, but you're also not clearing snow for 180 days.
Yeah, the sidewalks, or the walkways and things like that.
I guess, but $35 a day for 180 days is 6,300,
Yeah, well, if that's the case, then we're only asking for 4,500, so.
which is great.
I'll just get rid of the note for next year, so we won't have that issue.
Does it make sense to call that vehicle fuel instead of gasoline? Because there could be diesel
It's,
and other things.
Well,
When-
the titles, just as an FYI, they're very specific on what we can use for naming conventions based on the location function program, because this is something that's used across all schools within New Hampshire. So that's why it's, the name of it is not something that we can direct ourselves to use.
And those are subject to change going forward, because right now, the state gives us what's called a financial accounting handbook, and Jared's right, where they want to try to compare different school districts. So they're going to change that. There was a grant that they got from the federal government, so they're going to change this handbook down the road, probably 2 or 3 years, to try to make it even more, uniform. But it's those naming conventions, as Jared said, we don't have a whole lot of say in that.
Anything else on 17? Scott, I have a question. So on the bus contract, I know we talked about this a bunch, but if the bus doesn't run for a route, do we still pay the company that
No.
day?
Like that day.
Or
So in this
say-
particular
Like I'm
case-
looking at the $341 per bus, so does the town save $341 per bus that doesn't run?
If the route does not run, yes, but not on a given day. So we did get, during COVID, we did have some combined routes, and we did negotiate where we didn't, if they didn't have the drivers, then they gave us a credit for that particular day, yes, but we have not experienced that in like 2 years now.
Okay, so all the routes are running
Right now.
right now?
They are not all running. So you're going to see, we are desperately trying to get more bus drivers, and we just can't. So right now, they're running, I think, 15 or 16 bus runs. We want them to run 18 to 19 bus runs, and they're working hard, but as soon as they bring on a driver, they seem to lose one. So 18 or 19 bus runs is probably the sweet spot of where we need to be. Right now, we've got overcrowded buses, and that's been a challenge for us. But with this particular line, this is another one where next year, this is the last year of a 5-year contract, and now
This 25 is the
this
last
one
year.
will be the last year. And I'm already in negotiations with our current provider, and I've had discussions with another provider in terms of getting information from them. I haven't shared this with the school board yet, but it's gonna be another big increase, because they can't find drivers, and they need to raise their wages, and all of our school districts, we do talk, so we know what other districts are paying for transportation, and we share that information. I can tell you right now that it looks pretty good that these rates are gonna go up 20 to 25% next year.
So are we getting credit for the routes that aren't running
Yes,
this year?
yep, if you do
So
not.
we're getting $67,000 per route
Yes.
back in credit for
Correct.
our next, so when you negotiate the contract with the next.
It's not a credit, I just don't pay them, I
You
pay them
don't pay them
less.
now, so.
Correct. However,
This year.
that being said, we have negotiated with the bus company in terms of trying to get drivers. Folks have to keep in mind too that this is not our way or the highway. At least I don't believe that it should be. We have to get these kids to school. If we said, hey, I don't really give a darn, we contracted with you, this is what you're gonna get, and then they can only pay their driver $5 less an hour than the neighboring towns, that's not gonna be any help. It's gonna exacerbate the problem. We have used some of this, the runs that are not going, to help with, we've contributed towards retention and sign-on bonuses for new drivers with the bus company. So we have like a side memorandum of understanding to say, okay, we're gonna help attract and retain drivers, so they have attendance bonuses if they have perfect attendance for a given month, to try to keep the existing drivers that we have. This is a really complicated problem, and we're trying to do our best in Goffstown, as well as other communities, to try to keep the drivers that we have and bring on new ones. So it's one of the things, we get a lot of complaints from folks that we can't provide transportation. So I don't know the exact number. I can certainly, but we, of like a $67,000 that we're not spending on a route, I probably have given them that, if not two bus runs, in terms of the ability for incentives to keep drivers and get new ones. So,
And you've used that credit that we should get and gave it back to them? Is that what you're saying?
partial, so, a portion of it. The rest goes back to offset taxes, so.
Stacy?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Shouldn't that default number be lower on that line, since we're supposed to have a new of 333,000?
Can you repeat that?
So you're showing no new money here, but we were presented that there was new money of 333,000, so was your default should be
No,
lower?
you're, in terms of, I think you're looking at, it'll be the next page when you're looking at special ed.
496? Line 496?
Yeah,
Yep, so the presentation was your proposed was 1226, which was a difference of 333 from the default. But you're here, your default line, your proposed line are exactly the same.
because we are contractually obligated for a certain number of buses. Odds are we're not going to hit that
I
target.
think you're right. So,
What line are you talking about?
so 496,
Okay.
your default,
496 is special education.
yep. So we
Right.
got, I'm looking at the same presentation on page 16. You guys presented,
60?
yep, of our little handout here.
So the cost for special ed transportation has gone up.
Right, but so
Yeah.
aren't you missing something here? Because that new should have 333,000 in it.
No, because special education's mandated. It's not new. It's default. I have to provide transportation for
The
special ed.
FY
in the default as
24 to
well.
FY 25, is
So you
that
wouldn't-
the delta of 333? I think that's what you're looking at.
Yeah, just, so the presentation says it went up by 333,000. That's not going to be reflected on our pages, though.
Yes, it's
It is, it's in the
It's
default.
just not in the new. It automatically has to go into the default.
Because it's
What you're
special
saying.
ed.
Okay.
And the tricky part is even regular ed transportation, K through 8, is mandated by law.
So it's
High
not something
school
we
is
can negotiate
not.
out, like talk out of.
Right, so a
Okay.
lot of times, like when we get our new contract next year, there's going to be, for regular ed, there's gonna be a component of that that's gonna be in the default,
Yeah.
and there's gonna be part of that's in the new,
Okay, I see. Thank you.
okay?
Just need clarification.
No, this is, it's complicated.
Yeah,
This is
yeah.
not
here.
easy to explain.
I just want to go back to that portion where Scott said that we were actually giving private company money for bonuses and employee retention. How much money have we done that?
If you can hold on, I'll try to get you those numbers, but it's in the tens of thousands of dollars in terms of that. So in terms of trying to keep these drivers. So you got to keep in mind, when we signed this contract, the average wage for a bus driver might have been $17 or $18 an hour. We have drivers in other surrounding areas that are making $25, $26, $27 an hour. And the creative way of trying to deal with that is to help. We don't give the bonus. It is the bus company that gives. We're funding it per se. So they give us monthly attendance sheets, et cetera, and then they send us, it's part of the invoice, and we pay that. So just to try to keep the ones that we have, because we have, in our existing contract, there's such a disparity between the hourly wage that is in the contract versus the one that is in the real world, shall we say. So it's a way.
So you have a sidebar with this, on the contract, or
Yes.
with the company?
Yeah.
And that went through what committees and?
Approved by the school board.
School board, yeah.
So it was a memorandum of understanding?
Yeah.
Is that the?
Yeah.
Well, you're subsidizing a private company.
Well, it's not subsidizing.
Yes, it is.
because
It's subsidizing a private company. Don't say it's not. You're giving somebody money to help retain an employee. That's a subsidy.
That would be the amount of well, you're going to argue with me. I'm going to argue back.
No, it's not an argument. It's a statement. I mean,
Well, they would have been giving them the 19 buses anyway. We wouldn't have had to do that if we were able to fulfill the 19 bus contract, right? So we're actually on a winning side of a contract where we paid in for a lower amount of an hourly rate, but the market is not dictating that right now.
And we have DPW
If I may,
workers.
Mr. Chair.
What, I'm gonna let him finish.
I have DPW workers that signed a 5-year contract, and they're union. We stuck with it with the town. That's what we had to do. I mean, when you sign a contract, you sign a contract, and I think you go on the sidebar and start giving some money out of the contract on a different purpose. I think it should have been put out there a little bit more, even gone to the budget committee and said what you were doing.
I think that, yes, if the school board's gonna do something like this, they should be going to the budget committee.
But for
So
a
I'm
legally
gonna interject
contracted
on this
thing?
one.
Go ahead,
If
Jared.
you want to actually, if the budget committee wants to sit on and approve every contract that we have, get ready to gear up. We'll send everything at you to actually approve and
I'd
look
like to be
at.
paid for that.
Well, we approve all collective bargaining.
This isn't a collective bargaining.
No, I
This is a-
understand.
This is a vendor contract,
I
and I'm
understand,
sorry.
but if it's a
And
vendor
I'll even
contract.
say, to take Samantha's point, we're required by law to only provide buses, K through 8. So if you're looking to cut something, we can get rid of all the buses for the high school. I bet you a lot of parents are gonna get pissed off if that happens. And if we're gonna lose bus drivers because they can't get them, we're gonna find a way to try to retain and get bus drivers to drive these buses to alleviate our parents from having to drop our kids off or pick them up. I understand what you're saying, Peter. That is a collective bargaining agreement. This is not a vendor, this is a vendor agreement, two different items. And again, if you want to have every contract come to the budget committee, gear up, because we can do that, and I don't think you're going to like it.
Well, the contracts do come to the budget committee when they go through the budget. We have a contract, and we sign it with this.
Collective
That contract-
bargaining, absolutely.
No, I'm talking outside contracts. We just talked about the maintenance contract on the lighting and stuff.
Yep.
Okay, we just saw that on here.
Yep.
And if we've approved the budget, we're approving that contract. Would that be accurate? And
No.
what's the difference?
I understand your line of thinking, and I agree with it, because I believe that all of these line items are empirical evidence that make up the bottom line contract that is approved by the voters.
So if I could interject here, the management of the school district, one of the most critical components is getting the children to school. And it is no secret that there is a national bus driver shortage. It is no secret that that depending upon when a school district negotiates a contract, it is possible that neighboring communities might be signing off on a more generous contract than the one right next to them. No different than the basic economics 101, supply and demand. if there is a bus driver who's being paid $25 an hour in Hooksett and one being paid $18 in Goffstown to do the same exact job, more often than not, economics says that that driver will go to Hooksett because they're going to get $7 more an hour. The reality of it is that we have to get our kids to school. We can either behave as a partner with the bus company or not. We chose to be a partner and not have, and to get the kids to school and to try to retain as many drivers as possible. I would hope that if any of you were in that position, where you had to make a decision as to whether or not to have a side agreement, which, by the way, was discussed at a school board meeting, et cetera, that you would made the same decision, because the most important thing is getting our kids to school. Without that, it's kind of chaos. And like Jared said, one of the things which we did not want to do is we did not want to cut off high school transportation, because that's what we would have had to do, or to dramatically change school times and inconvenience, hundreds of parents, because we would have had to have staggered schedules. So with the opportunity, knowing that we saw a decrease in the number of bus runs, this was not a situation where we were paying extra. There were savings already inherent in the number of bus runs that were being reduced. And with that, a portion of that savings was used to allow the bus company to try to retain and attract drivers. So I stand by that. I brought it to the board agreed, and I think that these are unusual times, and sometimes unusual times, just like COVID, et cetera, they demand different and unusual responses. And I'm not even satisfied right now. I mean, the number of bus routes that we have, we get complaints weekly on this. We still do not provide transportation for Mountain View athletics or co-curriculars. We get calls all the time on that. So we're trying our best, and I'm sorry, you never know like what topic is going to generate excitement here at the budget committee. But I think that I think that the intent and the purpose was noble in the sense of just getting kids to school was the primary driver.
Stacy?
I don't doubt there was good intentions. I just wonder, how does the school board decide which contracts they would bring to the budget committee and which ones they wouldn't?
They don't have any obligation to bring any of that to you, technically, because there's a money in this budget, and their job is to operate and manage the schools. They have charged me with obviously certain operations, and again, when you are in a difficult situation, so the money is there, that 1-point-something million is there. If it was the other way around, Stacy, and let's say for an example that it was going to cost us $200,000, then I agree. But technically, this budget is one in which you have monies for transportation and you're trying to get kids to school. So we've had to make these difficult decisions for the last 3-4 years.
I understand. I think what I'm trying to do is find the respect for both boards here, and I think, we put in a lot of effort as well to be respectful of the budgets and understand it, but I think the feeling of having a behind-the-door conversation about a budget, what's our purpose then if we can't question these contracts and stuff? So I think your intentions were very good. I'm just trying to mediate this, agreement that I think there has to be an understanding of, there's some contracts that are not coming to us. Which ones are you determining are those contracts? And if you don't have that answer, I think that's something
Yeah, I don't
we need to
think-
talk about as a school board.
I'm going to let Jared go. Thank you.
Yeah.
So but legally, once the voters approve a budget, it's the school board that administers the budget. We go through the line items, and I'm of the mindset, just like I said to Peter, each of these line items is empirical evidence of why we need this money. If we're saying that we need $78,000 for something, it should go for that line that we're saying it's for. I don't think we should be taking that $78,000 and moving it to something else and doing line transfers. Legally, once we've approved a budget, school board administrators, that bottom line budget. I hate that term, I don't like that term, but that's what the law says. Legally speaking, any CBA has to come to this budget committee. So if we have 2 collective bargaining agreements with the school side, teachers, and then our support staff. As everybody remembers, last year was support staff, the year before that was teachers. We legally would come to this board. If there's other items that we think we want to have buy-in or we want to have an understanding, we will, of course, share that with you. The bus companies are something that parents, most of us know, with the buses, especially during COVID. That was all over them, and we had a lot of public comment about it. But we don't necessarily bring that to the board. We talk about it, we discuss it in public, we have public comment in public. But if it's something that is related to vendors, that normally doesn't come to this board. But if we're spending things out of the contingency fund, like we did a number of years ago,
You don't have
say,
to come to this board.
we don't have to, but we did. We said we wanted to actually use our contingency fund to get rid of the asbestos tiles that we had. We wanted to make sure that there was buy-in from the budget committee. So things like that.
Back then
of
you
course.
had to, now you don't.
Now we don't, but we would for things like that.
Yeah, so interesting that you say that, because on Monday night, the board, you don't even know this, but the board, we have a air handler, air conditioning unit that's 30 years old at Mountain View, that it's end of life, and we need to replace it, and we plan on using the CRF. My intention is to notify the two of you, like, hey, by the way, we're gonna be using that, and then share it amongst the board that, as a courtesy, to say, hey, we're going to be using our capital reserve fund because I got a 33-year-old, rooftop unit that needs replacement ASAP. So I think sometimes we learn lessons the hard way. I think we learned that lesson the hard way on the theater. But in terms of the respect between all of the boards, especially this board, to notify you. And I think there's a difference between notification and the management and who makes the decision. So, and I think we all know that. So it's like the select board is responsible for the town's management of funds, et cetera, and then the budget committee is the oversight piece of that. And then you have to have that respectful dialogue and awareness and notification so that it works. There's, and I think in this particular case, all of our business is done in a public way. It's in the minutes of school board meetings. We're talking about it. No one ducked this one, and nor would we. It's just something that happens. But there's never, by the way, I hope you know that there's Jared, myself, the school board we are the district where there's nothing that is, it's all open. The books it's the community's money, not our money.
But theoretically, we've approved the money you're spending for the buses.
Right.
Last year.
Right.
So we, the budget committee, are the ones that approved it.
So,
We
Mr.
approved it with the knowledge of 19 buses running at $341 for 180 days. And now the contract's changed. I think that's where there's a side contract that's supposed to be, that was approved by the school board. I think that to maybe help alleviate some concerns, maybe you can pass this on to the school board that contracts over a certain amount of money, when things change, maybe notify us about them instead of.
Absolutely. If somebody wanted to put a resolution out there to say exactly that, over this amount, to please notify us of that.
Like, I would say over like 500,000 or something. I'm just
Being
thinking
a
throwing a
bottom
number out,
line
but-
budget,
What?
but being a bottom line budget, they get the money now that they spend it.
I raised my hand a while ago, but we're just going to jump in. May I jump in, Mr. Chair?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. Am I wrong in assuming, or not assuming, but am I wrong in my understanding that the Budget Committee's function is oversight? But it is still the school board's budget. It is still the select board's budget. So if we came back with a motion to say, I wish to cut line item, $30,000 off, and we voted and it was approved, that budget goes back to the school board. It is still their budget. They can still say, okay, I have to work within that $30,000 reduction. However, it's their budget. They can still say, well, I'm going to, and again, please correct me if I'm wrong, they can decide where to spend their money. Now, if there's a line item change, if they would notify us, but none of that is actually within our purview. Correct? So what are we arguing about? It stayed with the buses. That's what I don't understand. It stayed with transportation. They chose to use the money instead of that we were going to pay anyway for 19 buses. They used it to increase the rate, which was their responsibility and privilege to do, really without notification of us. So I don't understand why we're not seeing on this one.
Peter?
we bring Continental Paving into town, we hire them to pave our roads, okay? Now, same circumstance, there were short drivers, there's short people working the pavers and stuff. We didn't, the town side didn't say, okay, we're gonna take this money and advertise for you and give your guys bonuses.
May I?
But that's what they did.
May I?
Lauren?
Thank you. You bring in DPW, or you bring in Continental Paving, you sign a $10 million contract. It comes to us, we say, this sounds kind of high to me, I would like to cut $50,000 off of it. We vote, it goes back to you, and you go, I don't have a bid out there. I don't have a bid out there for less than 50 grand, so I'm gonna take 50 grand out of DPW's budget to put it here because this is how I've decided that this is the important line item, like, it's your budget
You
to.
just blew everything out. I don't understand the word you said there.
All right. It's still within your budget. I guess we don't need to talk about hypotheticals. The school and the town's going to run very differently. There's different laws that govern you. Right?
So if we take, say, $100,000 out of the budget today, it goes back to the school board, they can decide to do it or not. So at the end of the day, it's
No, they
still
have
their
to.
budget, we just advise.
No, they
No.
have to do it, but it's up to them where they do it, is it not?
Well, no, so if you cut $100,000 from a line, and it's gonna reduce our overall proposed budget by $100,000, I assume, it would go back to the school board, and basically what we would be doing is we'd be voting to recommend or not recommend the budget that we've received from the budget committee. That's all that we do. We don't look at the individual line items. Because, and I hate to use this term again, legally, it's a bottom line budget where
Right.
we can spend the 52 million however we want.
That's kind of my, yes, okay.
Okay, anything else? Great, so we're
Page
done with
18.
page 17, we're gonna go to 18.
Almost done district.
Almost done district.
Which is honestly the hardest one, so.
Go ahead, Frank.
I have a question. Line 501, one monitor. 394,000?
No, it's just, that's a note thing. We'll just, I'll take that out.
So I just
That-
saved
that-
us,
That was a new school board,
Yeah.
scoreboard
No.
that we want to put up.
We're good.
oh, monitor. I
That's
thought
the
it was
school
like a
board
bus monitor.
No, it is a bus monitor. It's the notice that.
Okay.
The lines didn't line up with
Yeah.
it.
Gotcha.
And if they make that much, I have a new job.
And I
the
should,
application?
I should say that, it's funny, because I don't know if it was, Joe had said, hey, you gave everybody, the notes portion, honestly, is really more a tool for the school administrators and admin assistants to help them manage their budgets and where they're paying their bills from. It does give context to you, obviously, but it also, because you've got 1,700 lines, if someone doesn't correct a note, it throws off all confusion. Oh my God, what the heck is going on? But so with that, there's 3 or 4 already that I've identified, and I'll change those notes. But it's really what's in those default, new, and proposed columns that really matters, and I'll go and I'll make those adjustments that Samantha and Frank and others have mentioned.
Lauren?
Last year, did we just work off the proposed with actuals?
Yeah.
I feel like that was far less confusing. I don't know if I'm the only one
Well,
that,
we can change it. I thought going through notes would be helpful for many people because it articulates why we're spending $1.2 million.
Yeah.
It kind of lists out some of the
Lists it all out.
information. But
I don't disagree.
yeah, but we can, if we want to switch gears, we can definitely do that.
Just something to think about, because I was like, I don't remember this last year
Yeah,
being
so what happened is I always had 3 or 4 of the notes around, people could look at it per se. Chair always had them, vice chair. And then this year, I'm like,
We want to
okay.
kill trees to get everybody on
Yeah,
board.
so we.
Well, I don't know, guys. That makes sense, though, thank you.
Are there any questions, page 18? Scott, can you give me the actuals? I know it's right here, but for the homeless transportation, how much has been used this year?
Hold on. Just bear with
I mean, I know you made a $5,000 cut. but-
Yeah, hold on, I'll bring it up in a second. 2790.
Oh, so you can get year-to-dates
What?
that I asked for all.
No, not year-to-date, right now. This year you're talking about? Oh, I don't have that. I'd have to run a report.
The 20, do you have the 24
You, if,
actuals?
hold on. I have 23 actuals,
Okay.
which is on your report. The
that's
challenge with homeless transportation, so right now, our 23 actual was 27,589 against a $33,500 budget in 2023. And then we did lower it based upon, we're trying to, this thing's up, this budget's up a lot. So anywhere where I thought there was any ability to make a cut, I tried to, we tried to do that.
2023 actuals was $27,589.
Right. Now, this one is super, super tricky because one year you might be low, and then the next year you've got 2 kids that are homeless, and now all of a sudden you've got a $50,000 bill potentially.
Well, so if there's a student that, correct me if I'm wrong, says they live in Goffstown, but they might not live in Goffstown, that we're required to transport them to school.
Yeah. So there is a law, it's called McKinney-Vento, and with that law, if a student claims that they are homeless, then they then elect where they're going to school, where they have the greatest affiliation, okay? So you might have had a situation where, God forbid, a family member passed away, or there's a homeless, and now they're living with the grandfather, et cetera. We have to try to make those arrangements to provide that learning. The law says that you're providing that learning opportunity in the favor of the student, least disruptive to them. And sometimes least disruptive is living at grandma's house, even though they're homeless temporarily, and then busing them to Derry because that's where they were going to school before. So it's a very, and then a lot of these situations, we are cost sharing with the other school. It's really complicated. Thank goodness we only have a handful of these, but they're tricky.
Okay, anything else on page 18? Page 19?
Just give reference, line 530 is a totality of the district, and then line 531, we'd be going into Bartlett.
We're moving to Bartlett. Anything left for the district lines? Okay, we're gonna move on. Page 20.
Oh, I do.
Go ahead, Lori.
On 19 for 529,
That was the bond that we had at the theater that we satisfied no longer had to pay.
okay, great.
So is what was it?
So Laura just asked about line 529. It was 200,000, then 250,000. That was for the bond that we had for the theater renovations that we had back in the change of the millennia. The bond was completed, we paid it all off, and that's why it's showing default of 0.
Okay, so that should have decreased.
To 0.
Okay. Anything on page?
Oh, wait a minute, I'm sorry.
I mean,
Five-
that's why I'm so
sorry.
confused.
I read that wrong. 529 was the voter-approved transfers to the CRF.
Right.
So I'm
But-
sorry about
So
that, Laura.
will you be?
Well, no, because then it,
We don't have it in our default budget because that's a separate warrant article that would go in front of the voters.
so
If we-
this is just showing us what happened in the past, but of course, there's not going to be anything there because it's a warrant.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. I'm sorry about that.
No, that's
Yeah, so-
okay, because I was
It's a
looking at the
special
other
article,
stuff.
right?
You got it. So
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
happens
Special act.
is, everyone's right here. So you put as a special warrant article,
Yeah.
when it passes, it becomes part of your budget for that particular year.
Right.
Then you have to then take it out. So it's one of those things that's not part of your default, that you have to remove it because it's a one-time appropriation.
Okay. That's easy.
Are we on page 20?
We are on Bartlett.
Okay,
So,
so my question is on
Page
line 580, line 580, I know we discussed this in the presentations, but what caught my attention was they had said it's their school cost as part of the district-wide reading curriculum, but it's not on the other schools.
It should be. You will see Wonders reading curriculum at Maple and other schools. You should see
Was it
that.
already there and it's not new money?
It'll
for
be new
them?
money. It should be.
It-
I'm 99% sure that at Maple and other schools,
Nope,
you're
if you
going to
look at
see it.
Maple Labs changes on page 28 in the presentation, there's nothing with 18,000. And if you go to page 24,
I'm not looking at I'm just going to look at the budget just for a quick
Okay.
second. So, 642. Yeah, so again, I don't know if you want to skip ahead, but on page 32, line
know-
number 9,
Page 24 for Glen Lake.
on page,
Yeah.
page 32, 910, you'll see 47,000 for the Wonders Reading Program for that one, under new. And you're not going to see it at the high school. 'cause
Is
they
that
don't
just
use it.
elementary schools, or is that elementary and middle school?
I believe it's also middle,
I think
but
it's
then
K
it
through
stops.
8.
Because it's fifth, it goes 5th and 6th grade, and then it stops 7th and 8th, then you won't see it at the high school.
so, sorry, follow-up questions, Chair. So the different costs at each school is because of the school size?
School
And the
size.
amount, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Right, page 21. Go ahead,
I just have
Laura.
a spreadsheet question. This might be a Jared question. If I wanted to follow along on the sheets with the proposed budget and actuals, where are we in there?
So, what page? Give me a number.
585.
So like page
582.
21 on the
Yeah.
proposed, oh, yeah. So 582,
Yeah, so
where
let's
is that?
go with 580. So it's on the notes page for 20. So 580, Fund 10, Location 101, Function 111. So I basically come over here, I try to find the same thing. Fund 10, Location 101, Function 1100, I'm sorry, 1000, yeah, 1100. And then I look for 18642. 18642. 18642 is reference 408 on page 18 in the non-notes section.
Page 18.
That's kind
I
of a
mean, it
little
would
bit
be,
of
I
a,
mean, we run through this every year. It would be helpful if the reference lines matched up.
It will, that will not, they won't happen, because we put notes in. It just doesn't happen that way.
And then, I talked
Okay,
to our
I see it.
software vendor, it's like
Thank you.
ridiculous
That's
what they
kind of
want
the
to charge us every year to
Yes.
do it.
Yep.
Really.
Yeah, it's ridiculous, so. And like I mentioned before, most situations when you're reviewing budgets, and again, it's been a while since I did the town one, but the notes are not there. It's just, the notes are really for the end user per se. So for all intents and purposes, you would just be looking at actuals. That's it. The notes just provide context for administrators. It helps with this process, don't get me wrong, but it also then makes it a bit confusing because in most situations, you're not getting notes from any other entity. And most people don't. They don't get the notes. They just get, hey, here's what the prior year actuals are, here's what you're seeing. So,
Okay. Anything
That's
anything
it.
else?
Thanks.
Page 21. We're going to go page 21.
So on page, I just want to highlight one thing, because I get asked this question a bit, line 587. So you'll see that it's a reduction, that I took something out of the default, and on the state forms, I have to put in like what's included in the default. So I'll have to put on the state forms, hey, we increased the special ed expenditure by X because, of a mandated placement, et cetera, right, IEP. Then when there's a one-time expenditure, like there's this Gaga pit at Bartlett, well, that's not happening again. It was a one-timer. It's a little bit of money, but I have to at least reflect that I took that out, all right? Again, that's just part of the process of maintaining integrity with the default budget.
Okay, page 22. Page 24. An AED is $1,500.
This is the price that they gave me from facilities, so I,
Just- Page 25. Page 26. Scott, are we still, this is like, are we still purchasing like the physical encyclopedias?
no.
Because I'm looking at
No.
World Book Encyclopedia, $750. Are we buying?
No, these
No.
are online.
These are, oh,
online
this is soft, okay,
accesses, yeah.
capital, oh, got it. We're not buying
I
those
think
books.
we do have a physical set.
Yeah, but like the updated, you know, how
Correct,
every year it
it's
comes out.
not,
we're not
yeah,
doing
it's
it.
not.
I can't remember the last time I read like physical.
They were so fun though. You put them all together, they made a picture. It was like amazing.
Anything else, page 26, page 27?
I'm gonna ask a question
Go
about
ahead, Samantha.
768. I mean, I'm guess I'm more asking because it's like the only red type in the
Scott
entire.
is saying that Jared said that we needed to reduce this as part of our deliberation. So he wanted to mark it red to remind me that I made
This
that
decision.
motion as part of the school budget. No, actually, I don't know why it's red.
You saved us that?
It's like the only red one.
The reason why it's reduced is because it's based on actuals.
Jared's right, it was a Jared thing. So, it was red, yeah. I think I just did it so that it was a mental note for me to change it in the system, but probably got to change it
What's
back.
NHASP?
New
New
Hampshire
Hampshire
something.
Association of School Principals.
That's right.
That's different than the School Board Association.
Yes.
I haven't seen their lobbyist, to be honest.
There might not be one. They might just simply provide professional development. Not every, a lot of organizations don't provide. I'm only aware of a couple. Hampshire School Board, Mass Municipal Association, there's a few, New Hampshire School Administrators Association. But
So the School
association-
Administrators Association is different from the School Principals Association?
Yeah, yeah.
What's the difference?
I think a lot of them are, they were more like school superintendents, assistant superintendent would belong to those. I used to, no longer, now I'm just a part of the business one. So my organization does not do any type of lobbying effort. So they're different. They provide a lot of, as Jared mentioned before, that professional development, just a ton of resources that are out there.
Anybody else for 27? Go to 28. Page 29. Page 30.
page 30 brings us to the end of Bartlett and starts us at Maple.
I think I'm gonna call it, we'll call it here and then work on the rest of it next week.
I'm good to continue, but that's just me.
I think we can continue on to one more school at 7:50, but that's mine.
I agree.
I think we got this place out of our system. I think we can do it.
You say that, no knock on wood.
I was gonna say. There's a topic.
What are we doing?
I think we're gonna pick it up next meeting, so I'm gonna call it here. Are there any other questions on Bartlett or the school SAU budget? Like I said, we can go back to this stuff later, but we have 3 more dates. So we have 3 more dates after this. I like to hopefully get this done by next Thursday, but that'll give us time because we can do Maple Ave, middle school, high school, food service,
Glen Lake.
Glen Lake.
So my recommendation, if we're stopping now, would be do
Maple Ave.
Maple, Glen, and middle school.
Yep.
Next meeting.
Can we, sorry, can we vote on stopping or keeping going?
No, it's chair discussion.
You could override the chair, but.
No, I won't do that.
It's up to you. It's been happening a lot.
Motion to overrule the chair, that's what you want to do?
Can I get a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion to adjourn.
Is there a second? Motion by Smith, the second by Frank. All those in favor? All those opposed? All right, we're adjourned.
You would have disagreed right there, the adjourning part.
Thank you.
We could have all done, it's just not agreed to.
Motion to wear costumes next time.
So, second.